mean I have to talk now? No. Oh, good, okay. Tonight we're just going to do an exercise in silence. All right. So,
thank you.
How many of you guys caught this in the paper yesterday?
Yesterday.
It was on last week. Oh, really? They were telling us last week it was coming.
Yeah?
Yeah, I saw it I saw an email
well, it went
on
by
it.
Monday night.
How far away? Talked about it on the radio.
325,000 miles up there.
Yeah.
How much?
This is about 1,000 feet in diameter.
What do they think it's made of, Randall?
That I haven't been able to find out.
I was curious.
Yeah, the length of 3 football fields, so I thought that was timely after our discussions for the last. In fact, I just assumed that, it was probably the Cosmos, since we've been having this discussion here for the last few meetings, that the Cosmos thought that they'd give us a little thrill and shoot one by.
Is it a 10.3 libido to see it? It took a 3 inch, and that ain't what it called them.
What?
It ain't libido.
2.3 libido?
Yeah. 10.3 for the 3 inch.
10.3, okay, that makes more sense now.
10.3 telescope, or 3 inch telescope to see it.
You mean albedo?
Well, something like that.
That's not the same as libido.
No, it's not the same as libido.
Just think about
What?
That's a whole new story.
Well, the libido
Yes.
and 3 inches, they gotta go together.
That's right.
Hey, Randall, is it 1,050 or 1,080 feet long?
Well, I don't know. It said about 3 football fields. I think 1,056.
What would be the smallest size comet, asteroid, whatever, that would cause worldwide, black cloud devastation? A mile?
About 3,000 feet.
3,000 feet.
Yeah, half a kilometer to a kilometer.
And translate that in miles. How many?
Well, half a kilometer would be about 1,600 feet. And this one was 1,000 feet. So this wouldn't cause worldwide devastation. But let's say if it landed in Georgia, if it hit Georgia, you could pretty much kiss the southeast goodbye. Georgia, South Carolina,
But something
northern
like,
Florida, Alabama.
like a 1,600, if it hit in Georgia, would it affect China?
Yes. It wouldn't cause, what it would do is it would affect the global climate for a couple of years.
Putting it into an ice age?
Probably not that big. But now
That's
if you get up to a kilometer size, once you hit about half a mile in diameter, about 2,500 feet, 3,000 feet, now you're getting into some serious global consequences. But there again, it depends on the composition of the thing, how fast it's moving, because...
The angle of trajectory.
Yeah, angle of trajectory.
What's in it?
Remember now, it's like this. If Earth's moving through space like this, and if something comes up behind us and tail ends us, it's going to be a lot less energy than if it's a head-on collision. Because if it's a head-on collision, you've got to add Earth's velocity of 18.5 miles per second to the velocity of the incoming object. And the energy released is going to be a function of the square of the velocity. So you're going to have a pretty darn major event if it's a head-on.
Okay, so it's really a half a mile is where we see that's...
Yeah, but at about a half a mile, certainly a mile in diameter, pretty much no matter which direction it comes in, you're going to have global consequences. Because here's what you got to remember, folks. If something is going to hit the Earth
The whole picture.
in the future, it's already out there orbiting the sun. It's already there orbiting the sun, and it's on some orbit. There's hundreds and hundreds of orbits out there we've not discovered yet. And those orbits, there are things occupying those orbits, and as we identify them and are able to calculate the shape of their orbit and the periodicity of the thing, that's when we will be able to predict when the potential impactors are going to come. Now, where I think that the psychic component of it could be useful is the psychics could perhaps, just like in psychic forensics, they might point the mainstream detectives in a direction that they wouldn't go, or to look for some area where they wouldn't otherwise look for evidence. See, and I think the psychic component might be that they could suggest certain times and certain places to look to verify if there is something out there on a mathematically predictable orbit that would someday collide with the Earth, and then we could verify it. Okay, to get started, would somebody like to go ahead and volunteer to read this for us? This is Couple of words that you should recognize here. Underlined for you to make it easy.
Really?
What is that?
C block.
Anybody? I've got actually 4 handouts up here, and I'm going to
That's Diabolos, it means Satan.
Diabolos. Okay, so you want a handout, Jerry. Diabolos means the devil. The devil. Now see, this is where we get into the heresies. The part I love best is heresies. The Christian devil is not what Christians imagine it to be. And the true identity of Diabolos is revealed in this little, in this biblical quote right here. What's this say, Jerry?
Satanos.
Satanas. And who is Satanas?
Same thing. Isn't
Satan.
Satan.
Is there a
yes.
difference between the two?
Yes.
Oh.
And that's, yeah,
Really?
Oh.
Really?
that's right. Diabolos and Satanas, or Satanas.
What's it mean, Randall?
Well, here's the etymology. Devil in the original Greek is Diabolos. Turning to Strongs, if you know Strongs, what's Strongs? Strongs Concordance. Yep. We find that it means a traducer, a false accuser. Diabolo, from which it derives, means to traduce or to accuse. Going further back towards original meanings, we see that diabolo is made up of 2 more primitive words, dia, which is a primary preposition meaning through, and balo, a verb which has a collection of meanings according to use and context. Among these meanings we find to throw more or less violently, to cast out, to pour, to strike, to throw down, send down. A variant on the word diabolo is diabono, which is a word meaning to cross over. Dia is a variant of the word dis, which, very interestingly, turns out to be an obsolete form of the name of the supreme deity of the Greeks, which we render in modern form as Zeus, the same deity known to the Latins as Jove or Jupiter. Integrating some of these meanings renders an altogether different picture of the devil than the conventional view. Now, what do we know about Zeus?
Lightning.
Yeah, and in the Greek myths, they don't refer to it as lightning. What do they refer to it as? When he hurls his
Thunderbolt.
thunderbolts, yeah.
But Jupiter is also like the beneficent, is a good planet. It's considered.
Oh yeah, sure.
So there must be.
Well, like all planets, they have a dual nature. And remember, Dia also means 2.
Wasn't Zeus also over Atlantis with his 10 sons?
That was Poseidon. Yeah, Poseidon was the
father?
Yeah, well, he was the progenitor of the 10 kings of Atlantis. Okay. Now, we have all seen the depiction of.
There we go.
Now, remember what it says: to throw, to cast down, to send out. And here we see Zeus in that capacity as the hurler of the thunderbolt. Zeus hurling a thunderbolt. And we saw last meeting, if you remember, we found that the Tibetans had a thunderbolt symbol very, very similar to what the ancient Greeks had, called the dorje, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So here's a quote out of the book of Revelations. The old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. So let's look at the word he deceiveth. Now, this connects with the idea of being an accuser and a traducer, making false accusations, right? Connected with the idea of deceiveth. But the word which is translated as deceiveth is this word right here, planon. Deceiveth in the original Greek is planon. That's what I was showing you right here. Right there, planon. Okay? Which comes from the word planos. Strong's Concordance regarding the Greek original. Of certain uncertain affinity, and it means roving, roving as a tramp, and by implication, an impostor or misleader. So this idea of Satan being the deceiver, or Diabolos being the traducer, the false accuser, was not the original meaning of the term. The original meaning of the term, as it says here, was roving, roving. What does that mean?
Traveling.
Traveling. Yeah, going from one place to another.
Gypsy.
Sure, sure, and yeah, and there's again the idea, because the gypsies were always, mistrusted because they were, deceivers and so forth, right? Thieves and whatever. Okay, so by implication, an impostor or a misleader, deceiving, seducing. Among related words, we find plane, this word right here, Greek word, which means to stray or straying, such as straying from orthodoxy. Also, we find planeo, which means to roam, to cause to roam, to go astray, as from virtue or truth, or to wander, to be out of the way. The word planos, however, gave rise to another closely related word whose meaning may more nearly suggest the original intent of the author of Revelation. And that is the word planetes, which is a planet, a rover. Now, if you think about taking all of these meanings and putting them together, we have the idea that that Satan is described as planos or planeos, the deceiver. But we find that the original meaning means to rove, to go astray, to go astray, to go astray. Now, stop for a minute and think about the myth of Phaeton. What were some of the key elements of that myth? We've talked about it repeatedly in here. What happened in the myth of Phaeton?
It went down under the moon and caused problems on the earth.
Well, who was Phaeton, first of all?
The son of Zeus.
Son of Helios. And what did he do?
He took the reins but couldn't hold on to it.
The reins of the chariot of the sun. He took the chariot of the sun. He wanted to drive the chariot in the path of his father, Helios, but he couldn't control the reins, so what happened to the chariot?
Crashed and burned.
Well, before it crashed, didn't it deviate? Didn't it go astray
Yeah.
from the path to which it was ordained to travel? Yes. It went astray. It deviated. It strayed from the orthodoxy, if you will. And then what did Zeus have to do to intercede? What did Zeus do? Well, first, before Zeus did that, what happened? Once the chariot of the sun, guided by Phaeton, what happened? What
Crashed
happened?
and burned.
It set the earth afire, didn't it? It describes, in the myth, it describes the earth being set afire and the cities burning, the rivers drying up because of the tremendous heat. And then Zeus had to intercede, and he hurled his thunderbolt and struck the chariot from the sky, and it fell to earth, crashed into the river Eridanus, and that was the end of Phaeton and his wild ride.
Naughty.
Say that again. We go back how far?
About 19,000 years.
19,000 years ago, we were in the depths. That was the early in the age of Scorpio, and that was the depths of the coldest part of the ice
Okay,
age.
let's go back farther than that then. I mean, where the Earth's temperature was around 7 degrees warmer than it is now.
To that, we go back about 105,000 years.
Okay.
When
now,
the hippos were basking in the warm British Isles.
could this here
Yeah.
Cool.
could this be acquainted to that then?
No, I tend to think that this was something far more recent than that.
Really?
Well, yeah, I think this is probably something that's happened. We're talking about events that have happened within the last 5 to 12,000 years here.
Okay.
And of course, by now we realize that, the latest census is that there have been perhaps as many as 500 impacts within get this, 500 impacts within the last 10,000 years. Now, we're not talking planet killers, but we are talking about major events that could have and would have totally altered the course of civilization. We've been talking repeatedly in here about the Barringer Crater event in the Indian Ocean. But there's also almost certainly another crater found off the coast of New Zealand that is less than 10,000 years old, and it appears to be even bigger than the Barringer Crater, maybe as many as 16 or 18 miles in diameter. Now, that might be what spawned all the Aboriginal legends about fire from the sky and great tsunamis and so forth. And if this one bears out, what we're faced with is the realization that our planet has had undergone major assaults numerous times within the last 10 to 12,000 years.
Those two that were in water, how about the Barringer Crater out in Arizona?
The Barringer Crater probably dates to about 26,000 years ago.
I've heard 5,000.
No, it's not that young. It's not that young.
And how can you tell?
You can tell, well, a number of ways you can tell. First way you can tell is by looking at the oldest target rock that has been disturbed by the impact. Then the second way is you can look is by the crater is dug out. So then once the hole is created, now sediment starts forming in there. And if you can find anything organic within that sediment, you can date it. Now, one of the things is that the sediment on the bottom of the Barringer Crater in Arizona, how many, you've been to Barringer, right?
No.
Oh,
I
Sam,
have,
who's
yeah.
been to the meteor
I've
crater
been
in
at the bottom
Arizona?
of it, yeah.
Did we go there together?
No, I went.
You went on your
20
own, right?
20 years ago.
Well, okay, so I was about to say that on the bottom of Barringer Crater are thick lake deposits. So at some point there's been a major body of water held within that crater, which is very interesting because my suspicion is that held a body of water probably when the great rains fell at the end of the last ice age. That became a temporary lake, much like that would have looked much like Basumtwi in Africa, where you have this perfectly circular lake. I've shown you slides of it, but you probably don't remember.
And that's a crater lake too.
That's a crater lake. A fairly large crater lake.
And scientists agree on that.
Yeah, it was one of the earliest. It was actually identified as a meteor crater way back in the 1930s. It was one of the first ones. So, what I'm getting at here is that when you penetrate the outer and allegorical or literal meaning of these verses, like here I'm extracting verses from the book of Revelations, and you follow the trail of etymology back to the original meanings, it points to a possible interpretation or translation that's considerably at variance with the Orthodox translation. And here, what I'm suggesting is that what it's really describing, what in the early Christian tradition, their concept of the devil, the Diabolos, Satanon, was very much like many other ancient cultures had a concept of a devil. And you'll see, I'm showing you this by comparison because we're going to be looking at the Mayan stuff shortly. And we're going to see many parallels between early Christian traditions, particularly like from the book of Revelations, and some of the stuff that the Mayans believed. And this idea, we all know from the Judeo-Christian tradition, or at least from the Christian tradition, that Lucifer, remember what Lucifer translates as what? What does Lucifer mean?
Bringer of light.
The bringer of light. Now that seems like a mighty odd appellation to put on a symbol of pure evil, right? The bringer of light. When I first heard that years and years and years ago, I puzzled over that. What? Why would this bad guy, the symbol of evil, be the bringer of light? Well, it's not hard to fathom when you actually think that it might be a veiled allegorical reference to an experience that early humanity had of cosmic nature impinging itself upon the terrestrial domain. So what I'm getting at here is that, when you look at this, it's describing Satan as being the deceiver. But then we see that the deceiver was only a secondary or even a tertiary meaning. The original meaning was to roam or to go astray. And by reference to the myth of Phaeton, here we have the Greeks preserving exactly an account that sounds very explicitly like the account of a very close encounter between the Earth and a bolide or a meteor, whatever you want to call it, an asteroid or a comet, whatever the object was, that essentially went astray off of its normal path. Remember what Plato said that in his preface to his story of Atlantis in the book of Timaeus. Remember he said it has the form of a myth. When Plato is talking about his commentary on Phaeton, the Phaeton myth, and he says it has the form of myth, but it actually signifies a deviation of the bodies that are rotating in space and a close encounter between the Earth and these bodies. I mean, he says that just as plain as anybody possibly could. And see, what he's saying is that it's a deviation of the body. Some body is going in space. Think about what happened to Shoemaker-Levy 9. It passed within the vicinity of Jupiter. Jupiter's heavy gravity, Zeus, the heavy gravity of Zeus, drew Shoemaker-Levy 9 out of its previous orbit and sent it on a direct collision course with Jupiter. And that's what Jupiter does. That's Jupiter's function within the solar system. Is Jupiter is the gatekeeper, so to speak. All of the cosmic debris that wants to come into the inner solar system passes through the zone of Jupiter before it gets here. And Jupiter will sweep that stuff up and either hurl it back out of the solar system, where of course it presents no threat to us terrestrials, or he throws it towards the sun, in which case it becomes a potential Earth crosser and thereby becomes potentially threatening to we little humans, microbial humans living down here on the bottom of the 4,000 mile deep gravity well on the surface of this planet. So we find that the word planos, which means to wander or to roam, then became incorporated, became appropriated for the term for planets. Because planets obviously are moving. When you go out and you look against the fixed backdrop of stars, it's the planets that we see moving. And so they become the wanderers. But there was another family of wanderers out there as well. The planets don't threaten Earth, but the other family of wanderers have threatened Earth, and will continue to threaten Earth, and have embedded themselves in the deepest sacred and archaic traditions of mankind. And what I'm trying to show here, it's not that I'm obsessed with all of this, it's just that once you recognize it and you learn to read the symbolical language, it's hard to go anywhere to any of the ancient traditions and open the box and not discover it there. And it's for that reason that I keep coming back to it, because it's so universal and so deeply embedded in some of the most powerful of our ancient traditions that you just can't avoid it and get around it. And I've had people over the years, several talks that I've given, I've had people raise their hands or whatever and giving somewhat of objections before for example, if I start talking about the scientific information, the scientific evidence for encounters between Earth and objects from space, they'll say, well, if this really did happen and early man experienced it, then wouldn't all of these traditions and stuff somehow reflect that? To which I would reply, yes, they would, and they do. In fact, but you have to know how to read the symbolism of it. And that's why I've made these handouts, and I only was able to get Sam to print 4 of them. But in here, I've made a whole list from the slide.
I'll have them all ready.
He'll have these handouts for you guys in 2 weeks. But if you remember, let's see how many of the symbols that have been incorporated in one level or another to represent the cosmic entities. The first, I'll start out. The first and probably most prominent one is the serpent dragon symbol. What else? What were some others? Swords, yes, swords. Swords were frequently employed to describe particularly comets. What else?
Chinese broomsticks.
Yeah.
Brooms, yes, the broom stars, brooms, sweeping away the old to make way for the new. Yes, very appropriate. And some comets even look like brooms. Okay, what else? What else?
Comet, Greek cometos, hair.
Hair, long hair, beards. Yes.
Would that be related to, the French, the Merovingians, or
The Merovingians,
yeah.
the long-haired kings.
Yeah, that.
I would suggest that it's very probable.
Okay.
Yes, I would, for a variety of reasons. We'll come back to that one day. What else? What else?
Sanskrit ketu, pennant.
Pennant. That's a new
Shaped
one
like
for
a
me.
pennant, like a flag, a long flag.
Oh, okay, that's a new one. I need to add that to the list. What else? What about a burning torch?
Mithras.
Right? Burning torch, what else? Well, we've already talked about the one tonight, the thunderbolt.
Ghosts and goblins.
Sure. How about the swastika or swastika?
Yeah.
Yes, that's been employed quite frequently. What else? A scythe or a sickle is another one commonly employed. A burning lamp, that kind of fits in with the torch, but a burning lamp. And a chariot, as in the myth we were just talking about, the chariot of the sun, in the myth of Phaeton.
The Europeans had pictures of knives and swords.
The what?
Those knives and swords, the curvy.
Yeah, but Paul already said that.
He said it first. He gets
Paul
it.
said it first, Julie. Yeah, that pretty much covers the list. So now, when you go and you start reading, or if you look at an image, or you read a myth or a story, you look at a carving or an icon, and you see some of these things, perhaps you should look at these in a different light. The one I have here that I find quite interesting, I've shown it to you before, is, let's see here. Let's look at the Chinese. This is from ancient China, and one should obviously pop out.
You got the swastika.
The swastika, yes. Now, Carl Sagan, in his book Comet, pointed out that, astronomers have seen comet nuclei spinning. Sometimes when they start devolatilizing, they can spin quite rapidly, and they will spew out jets that will form the arms of the swastika. Here's a sword that may have actually incorporated meteoritic iron. And see what they've carved on it? Now, this is interesting because we've seen that there's a whole body of emerging evidence that in about 206 or 208 BC, right in there may have been a major impact in Germany that had the strength of 5,000 Hiroshima bombs. Have you seen anybody seen any of that? Okay, I've got to bring that in and show it to you there.
Yeah, so
Well,
I did, yeah. You Paul remembers.
The iron that early man used was pretty much all meteors, wasn't it? Meteorites.
Yeah.
Iron meteors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, and when you go into the old accounts from 1,000 years ago and longer, we begin to see that the references are very explicit. In the same year appeared signs in the heavens among the stars, which appeared some falling, others blazing like torches. It's just comets have inspired dread, fear, and awe in many different cultures and societies around the world and throughout time. They have been branded with such titles as the Harbinger of Doom and the Menace of the Universe. That sounds like a good title for the next Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yes, Indiana Jones and the Menace of the Universe. I understand that the new one that's coming out is supposed to have some extraterrestrial something or another in it.
They say it's real good one.
Like a bee?
Yeah, but this one's in the 50s, so I think it's set in the Cold War.
So you're talking about like a potential asteroid or an alien?
Well, I'm not sure yet because they haven't been very explicit on that one.
Okay.
But I'm sure it'll be fun. So, now notice the dual nature here. They have been regarded both as omens of disaster and messengers of the gods.
So messengers of the god could be good or bad.
That's right.
Isn't it?
That's right. It could be good or bad. Now, notice the word that we use, disaster. Disaster. What does that mean? What's the etymology of that word?
Demon.
Asteroid.
Yeah.
Aster means star,
Yeah.
means evil star. So you see, these secrets are actually embedded right in the language we use. So why is it that comets are some of the most feared and venerated objects in the night sky? Why did so many cultures cringe at the sight of a comet? What were the gods trying to say? Some cultures read the message by the images that they saw upon looking at the comet. For example, to some cultures, the tail of the comet gave it the appearance of the head of a woman with long flowing hair behind her. This sorrowful symbol of mourning was understood to mean that the gods had sent the comet to Earth were displeased. Symbol of not mourning, but mourning, yes, with a U. And that brings us to this symbol and image that I've shown you before that's very intrinsic to the Masonic symbolism. And what do we see happening in this image? See, here's the whole, all of the elements are right here.
There's the sickle.
There's the sickle, right, exactly. Now see, a couple of months ago I would have shown you this and you would have not made that connection with the sickle. But also, there's the long flowing hair, right?
Right.
So right there we see two of the elements combined. And then...
And he's got a long beard.
And he's got a long beard, so there's three elements combined. Then we see...
Disaster.
Right, she's holding this in her hand. What is that? Who remembers? Paul, you remember, right? Not the palm. Look what she's got in her hand.
Oh,
I can't.
like the thunderbolt.
No, it's not.
No. Well, she's got two things. She's got two things.
Location.
She's got right here the leaves, the acacia. That's the acacia branch. And what does that symbolize?
Regeneration.
Yes, it symbolizes regeneration. It symbolizes death and then resurrection from the death. It's a phoenix-like meaning to it. In that, in the story of the slaying of the master builder, how they discovered the body of the master builder prior to resurrecting the master builder was there was a sprig of acacia growing there. And so it's become a symbol for, as you said, resurrection or regeneration. What was the word you said?
Regeneration.
Regeneration, yes. What she got in her other hand?
A boat.
What is it?
I can't make it. I don't know.
That's the
Starts with a G.
gyroscope.
No. Starts with a G. What is it?
Grail.
You got to take the cover off to see what it is.
Oh,
It's
it's
the
a
grail.
grail.
Yes, yes.
Wow, that's sneaky.
That is very sneaky,
Covered it
but
up.
it's very important to the whole meaning of this. See, to read this thing, you have to look at these symbols holistically. You have to put each one of them together. Now notice the other thing. Let's see, the broken column.
Right.
We talked about that. And what could that represent?
Broken cities.
Broken cities, yes. It represents the column is the
Devastation.
symbol of man's civilization. So here we have, out of masonry, her head is bowed in mourning. She's mourning over this broken column. In one hand she holds the grail, in the other hand she holds the acacia branch, the symbol of renewal and regeneration. The angel with the long white flowing beard is plaiting her hair. And he holds a sickle. What is the sickle a symbol of?
Comet.
The comet.
Yes, but it's also a symbol of the harvest, right?
Right.
And the Grim Reaper.
Well, it's interesting what it's cutting through is on the picture.
Well, what is this down here?
It's an hourglass.
That's an hour.
It's
Yeah.
actually cutting through there.
Yeah, and what is the hourglass telling us? What's the symbol of the meaning of the hourglass?
Time running out.
Exactly. Exactly. The time is a critical element here. See, that's the whole meaning. And I know very few Masons. In fact, I've never met a Mason yet that looked at that and was able to read it.
Really?
Well,
That's surprising.
why would that be surprising?
I thought you guys knew all this stuff.
Well, it's not quite what you think it is.
Well, nothing
There's
is.
lots and lots and lots of stuff there, and very few of them actually can
Get it.
get it right.
Now tell me with the meaning of the grail, the symbology of the grail. Because there's like a bazillion. Oh,
Especially the
grail.
covered one.
yeah.
Well, if I was to do that, Elizabeth,
Oh.
we would never get to the Mayans, and Paul would be really upset with me.
Oh.
What about the book?
The
Not
book,
a hint.
well, the book is open. Okay.
And I mean, to me, it would look like she might be reading it.
Yeah,
Rather than
reading the
being
book
morning
instead
and
of
morning.
Right. I say it's mourning because I'm familiar with the symbol from Masonic
Oh, you do
rituals
know.
and so forth. What's that, Whit?
You do know.
What do I know?
He's an unusual Mason.
Oh,
Got
okay.
it.
Well, the book is probably opened to Well, it's probably open to the passage of the that we read, but I won't get into that. We save that for the third degree ritual.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be ritualized after this?
We will see.
We'll be members of the Blue Line.
We can,
See, I probably told you way too much already. Yes, here's, just look at this very quickly. And here's, oops,
I have never understood the bell and the dorje and what it had to do with the bell.
the bell.
I get it.
Well, you know, they go together.
Yeah. You don't know, Dolores? Okay, well, I'll have to whisper it in your ear one of these days.
That's a nice.
Isn't that nice? I wish I had that sitting in my room.
Really?
But yeah, the bell is an important symbol. He's got a bell right there. So here's the dorje, and here's the bell.
I'll take your word for it.
Take a look closely at let's look closely at that dorje. See it? Now, let's look at
Ooh.
I'm sorry about that.
He's blowing down.
Keep going down.
No laughing. Laughing's not
Now,
allowed.
which one's the Dorje here?
This way, man. This is it, man.
Bob.
We're off tonight. Well, okay, so the dorje represents the thunderbolt.
Yes, the thunderbolt.
That looked like what you called the grill that the woman was holding.
Well, there is a similarity. Yes, there is. When you put the cap on the grail,
Yeah.
when you put the cover on it, because in order for the alchemy, the transmutation to take place within the grail, you have to have it sealed. See, so in the Christian mythology, Joseph of Arimathea took the holy blood from Christ, dripping from his wounded side on the cross. The blood dripped into the grail, and then he sealed it, and then carried it to
Glastonbury.
where?
Glastonbury.
To Glastonbury, right. And founded the first Christian abbey. And here's another depiction of a dorje. A symbol of cosmic power. That's what this is, a symbol of cosmic power.